So I get asked all the time, especially in wellness care, like how often should I be getting adjusted? And the answer is just this. It's you need to be getting adjusted as often as the stresses you have that are creating subluxation. So what causes subluxation? Well, it's physical stresses. So if you have a job where you do a bunch of manual stuff like physical, or if you have a job where you sit a lot, I mean, that's physical stress. Or if you are a stay-at-home mom and you got to do a bunch of bending and lifting and you're putting toddlers on your hip, like, so those are examples of like physical stresses that could create misalignments. They don't have to be traumas. It's just physical stresses. Or things like emotional stress. Emotional stress creates defense physiology. We know that stress, is known to create disease. So emotional stress can really cause a lot of defense physiology, which again would make it necessary to be getting adjusted. And then you have stuff like chemical stress. And chemical stress is, exposures to different toxins or chemicals. And it can be as simple as stuff like, the deodorant that you use, or the toothpaste that you use, or if you eat genetically modified food, or if you're eating, grains or cereals or pastas that have like glyphosate on them. So, toxins in our food and nitrates and that sort of stuff. So those are example of chemical stressors that could cause, again, damage and create subluxation. So really how often we should be getting adjusted should be a reflection of the amount of stresses that we have going on in our life. And sometimes we go in seasons. Some seasons we have way more stresses and some seasons we have less stresses. Like I always tell people to get extra adjusted during the holiday season because people typically are traveling more. So physical stress with sitting in cars or planes, sleeping in different beds. And then you have stuff like emotional stress, like hanging out with family. And then, you have, chemical stress because you typically don't eat as good as you normally do in just, non-holiday mode. So again, how often we should be getting adjusted, especially in wellness care, should be a reflection of the stresses that we have going on. Sometimes we have more stresses, sometimes we have less stresses. And technically it should be a reflection of the amount of stresses or how fast subluxations are being created. This is also why it's so important to make sure we're trying to get good correction, especially if we're starting off in a corrective protocol. Because the more correction you get on your x-ray, the stronger, more resilient your spine is to getting subluxated with the same amount of stress. So if someone has a beautiful 45-degree arc of life in their neck versus someone who has a straight neck, they could have the same amount of stress, but the straight neck is gonna have way more health issues, subluxations, symptomatology than the person with the good curve in their neck, because that good curve is more resilient to stresses. That nerve system can handle more stress than the person with the straight neck. So make sure we're getting correction, make sure we're getting adjusted based off those stressors. If you have a certain frequency where you say you're coming in every other week, but you're going through a bunch of extra stresses that's more than normal, well, get an extra adjustment. We got to make sure that your adjustment frequency is matching the amount of stresses that you have going on. So, all right, guys, talk to you later.